Jai Anilo Premadano Karma Kacho
Janam jana salakaya Chaksulamritam jena Tasmai Sri Gurave Namaha Sri Chaitanya Manubhistam Stapitam Jena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapandantikam Vandeham Sri Guru Sri Jata Padakamalan Sri Gurum Vaishnavam Sri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahaguna Raghunathan Nitam Stritam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Varijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Sri Radha Krishna Padam Sahaguna Lalita Sri Vishakanitam Scha Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesa Sunnavadi Astata Deshatarine Vanchakapadru Vaischa Vipashindu Devacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Namo Mahavaranyaya Krishna Prema Pradayate Krishnaya Krishna Chaitanya Namane Gure Tishe Namaha He Krishna Karana Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurange Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanusute Devi Pranamami Hori Priye. So first I want to say Hare Krishna to all of my friends, devotees, who I have missed for many months. I'm very happy to be with all of you again. And I have been waiting a long time to get the opportunity to see each of you. So I'm very happy that Krishna has again brought us together. I thought that this week I would speak on the Bhagavad Gita, chapter 7, which is entitled Knowledge of the Absolute Truth. For those of you who have heard our previous discourses on Bhagavad Gita, we have come through the 6th chapter, and at the end of the 6th chapter, Krishna has made a very striking statement. He said, Yoginam api sarvesham Madhyatenantaratmanam Shrabavan Bhajanti Yogam Same Yudhatamo Mataha. And of all the yogis, the one with great faith, who always abides in me, thinks of me within himself, and renders transcendental loving service to me, he is the most intimately united with me in yoga and is the highest of all. That is my opinion. the first 6 chapters of the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna explains Gyan, knowledge, and yoga, with the goal being to come to Nishkam Karma, no more desires, to act without any selfish personal desires. Now, in chapter 7, in the next 6 chapters, first, there are 18 chapters in Gita. If we divide it in 3 sections, the first 6, Krishna has given knowledge especially about the self and how one can do service, being free from selfish desire. Now, in the next 6 chapters, that is chapter 7 to 12, he explains devotional service, which is pure, free from all gyan and karma. In the 6th chapter end, in the verse I read, Krishna has said that one should do service with mind fixed on him. So now Krishna explains how to get this knowledge about him. Because if we are going to serve him, we have to know him. So starting with chapter 7, it is entitled Knowledge of the Absolute. So this chapter will give us so much knowledge about Krishna, which will help us to meditate upon him in all that we do. Maya Shakta Manha Parda Yogam Yunjan Mad Ashrayaha Asansayam Samarbrahmam Yatha Nyashtrasi Tachshrimu. The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, "Now hear, O son of Pritha, how by practicing yoga in full consciousness of me, with mind attached to me, you can know me, full, free from doubt." Prabhupada says, in the 7th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, the nature of Krishna consciousness is fully described. Krishna is full in all opulences, and how he manifests such opulences is described herein. Also, 4 kinds of fortunate people who become attached to Krishna, and 4 kinds of unfortunate people who never take to Krishna are described in this chapter. Especially, we hear in this chapter then about Krishna's opulences. In the beginning, we'll hear about his material opulences, and then gradually about his spiritual opulences. The more we become convinced about Krishna's supremacy, about his true position as the Supreme Lord without any equal, the more easily we'll be able to surrender unto him. Of course, when we take up the process of Bhakti Yoga, we get reciprocation from Krishna. Yeyatamam prapanyate tam stataiva bhajamyaham. As we start to surrender into Krishna, Krishna will reciprocate and reward us. Krishna is within the heart of each and every living being, and therefore he begins to inspire the devotee how to serve him in a very perfect way. But first of all, we have to know how to please Krishna. If we don't know who Krishna is, then how will we know what Krishna likes? Prabhupada gives the example. If the master calls for milk and you bring the master water, it may be that you have a desire to render service, but you're not actually knowing how to please the Master. So the more we can understand Krishna's actual desire, that means the more we learn about him and what pleases him, the more our service will be accepted by him. Prabhupada says at the end of the 6th chapter, it has been clearly stated that the steady concentration of the mind upon Krishna, or in other words, Krishna consciousness, is the highest form of all yoga. By concentrating one's mind upon Krishna, one is able to know the absolute truth completely. This is yoga, to control the mind. Krishna says that wherever the mind has wandered, we have to bring it back. He uses the example that sometimes the senses wander out, but the senses have to be withdrawn and focused on Krishna, just like a tortoise withdraws its limbs into its shell. So in the beginning of Krishna consciousness, we have to first of all focus on Krishna. And it is natural that we may find difficulty when we go out into the world being able to relate everything to Krishna. A neophyte, a beginning devotee, has an easy time of seeing Krishna in the form of the deity. But it is not so easy for a neophyte to be able to see how everything in the world relates to Krishna. In that sense, a neophyte person will often accept and reject. This is Krishna, this is not Krishna. The highest Krishna, the Uttam Bhagavata, sees everything in relationship to Krishna. Because factually, everything is made of Krishna's energies. There is nothing in existence in that sense that is not Krishna. But to come to that very, very high state of consciousness, one has to gradually practice seeing Krishna in the ways in which Bhagavad Gita will teach us. As we see, when Krishna describes the different energies which make up this material world, and then the energies which make up the spiritual world, and then the living entity, the marginal energy. Slowly but surely, Krishna trains Arjuna how to see with absolute vision. A person in full Krishna consciousness knows Krishna personally. And when you know Krishna personally, it is to be understood that you have come to the final goal of yoga. Yoga is like a ladder, and the topmost rung of that ladder is bhakti. So one who is performing bhakti to Krishna has come to the final conclusion. But we should understand what is real bhakti. Bhakti is not mere sentiment. Bhakti includes jnana and karma. These are there within bhakti. So a true devotee does not violate the injunctions of Scripture. Rather, a pure devotee's activities uphold the statements of Scripture. So we have to know how to be able to recognize Krishna, how to know how to recognize Krishna's devotees, how to deal with the innocent people, and how to avoid those who are opposed to Krishna. This is the vision of the Madhyam Bhakta. And a Madhyam Bhakta is capable of existing and preaching within this world. This movement is especially meant for preaching Krishna consciousness. It is especially meant for training a class of preachers or Brahmins who can bring about a change in the consciousness of society. In order to do so, they have to come to this Madhyam platform of being able to distinguish the Lord, the devotees, the innocent, and the demons, and to deal with each appropriately. Not to mix dealings, but to actually know how to give the proper attention to each category. This is mentioned in the Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada says that in order to concentrate the mind upon Krishna, it is made possible by prescribed devotional service in 9 different forms, of which Shravanam is the first and most important. Therefore the Lord says to Arjuna, touch Shrinu, hear from me, because no one is a greater authority than Krishna. So to be able to fix the mind on Krishna, the method is by devotional service, and that begins with the process of hearing. Therefore, hearing is given so much importance. What should we hear? Especially we should hear Bhagavad Gita, Srimad Bhagavatam, Chaitanya Chaitamrita. These literatures have especially been chosen by Srila Prabhupada because they are important in our Gaudiya Vaishnava tradition. Beginning with Bhagavad Gita. This is the essential book, the book which Srila Prabhupada relied most upon for preaching. For the devotees who are going to be able to change the world, the Bhagavad Gita is going to be the means. So you have to study Bhagavad Gita and master its knowledge. Because within this Bhagavad Gita, you can convince people of all walks of life how to surrender to Krishna. This Bhagavad Gita is the best of literatures because it is directly spoken by the best authority, Lord Krishna. These are his own words. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has ordered everyone to become guru. Amara Guru Hari Tare Desh, Yari Deki Tare Kaha, Krishna Upadesh. This Krishna Upadesh means Bhagavad Gita. Wherever you go, whoever you meet, speak to them knowledge from the Gita. So we get this opportunity. If we go out, we try to sell Srila Prabhupada's books, there'll be ample opportunities to meet nice people and to either give them Bhagavad Gita, or if you get opportunity, to speak something of Gita. To convince someone by saying some good words about the Gita is also to speak the message of Gita. This is a very good service. This is a proper service for a servant to do. If you are a servant of your guru and you are going to meet a nice person, your business is to introduce your friend to your guru, and your guru will do the talking. So a book distributor's business is like this. He or she goes and introduces Srila Prabhupada and the worshipable Lord of Prabhupada, Lord Krishna. You're introducing Lord Krishna and Krishna's pure devotee Srila Prabhupada to the conditioned soul. And the nicer you do it, the more the person will be eager to associate with Krishna and Prabhupada. But this is how we render nice service through book distribution. It is a very confidential service. Therefore, Krishna says, whoever does this service of offering these teachings to the devotees and to others is most dear to me. Now, Prabhupada quotes in the purport a number of verses from the Srimad Bhagavatam, which describe the process of understanding Krishna. Srinvatam Sakata Krishna, Punya Shravana Kirtana, Hridyantashtavya Bhadrani, Vidanoti Suritsatam. This whole 7th chapter is to prepare us to receive knowledge about Krishna. And so, Srila Prabhupada quotes from the 2nd chapter of the 1st canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. He quotes 5 verses. Nasta prayeshu abhadreshu nityam bhagavata sevaya bhagavata uttama shlokir bhakti bhavati naistaki. Then tatha rajas tama bhava kamala bhavdayas jaye cheta eter anavidham stitam sattve prasidate. Then evam prasana manaso bhagavat bhakti yogataha Bhagavatatta Vikyana Mukta Sangasya Jayate. And finally, Vidyate Hidaye Grantis Chidyanti Sarva Samsayaha Shyanti Chasya Paramani Drista Eva Anishvare. These are very famous verses which you can commit to memory for your welfare. The translations I will read. To hear about Krishna from Vedic literature, or to hear from him directly through Bhagavad Gita, is itself righteous activity. Therefore, every day we should do this. When you're at home, when you're at work, wherever you are, if you can find 10 minutes, 15 minutes even, to hear from these Vedic literatures, this is the most righteous activity. This creates your good fortune. We see why is it that sometimes a person can easily take the Krishna consciousness more than someone else. Because of the accumulated good fortune they have. So this accumulated good fortune comes when we hear and associate with Srimad Bhagavatam and Bhagavad Gita and other Vedic literatures. It makes all of the other activities of devotional service easier to perform. If you are finding it difficult to sit there. You can sit. No. You all right? Next time you sit there, please. So, then Prabhupada says, the Bhagavatam says, and for one who hears about Krishna, Lord Krishna, who is dwelling in everyone's heart, acts as the best wishing friend and purifies the devotee who constantly engages in hearing of him. This means that Krishna personally acts to purify a devotee's heart. Krishna is not so far away. Here he is described as our best, well-wishing friend. That means that we're encouraged to have a personal relationship with Krishna. Otherwise, why should the word friend be there? Why is he the best, well-wishing friend? Because who else would live with us as long as Krishna has? Do you think my wife would do so? I don't think so. One lifetime is about as much as any woman can tolerate her husband. And probably one life is as much as any husband can tolerate with any wife. But here we find that Krishna is prepared to tolerate us not only when we are as human beings, he even accompanies us in lower births. I don't think, if you tell your wife, my dear wife, instead of going to take a vacation to where?
Hawaii.
I have decided that I will take my next vacation in the body of a hog. So I request that since you are my wife, since you have taken a vow at the time of marriage, that you will always accompany me wherever I go, you also take birth as a hog. Will your wife agree? This will be the real test of the love between a husband and wife. Of course, if your wife is intelligent, she'll say, you go ahead, and I will remain as a human, and I will cook prasadam and feed it to you. And I will every day come to the temple and pray on your behalf. But actually, this is Krishna. Of course, Krishna doesn't have to become a hog to accompany us, because he's Paramatma. He's transcendental to this changing body. He's eternal and has an eternal abode. So when he is within the heart of all living entities, he's not affected by the changing circumstances that affect our body. But still, Krishna accompanies us. So certainly it is a fact, he is our best friend. And we should learn to know this. That Krishna that we see, Radha Nilamada, Radha Girimari, as we see the deity, that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Nityananda Prabhu that we see, they are the lords of our heart. And they're so kind that they have agreed to appear before us in a physical form, so that we can see them with these eyes, we can touch them with these hands. Therefore, the deity is so merciful, and the holy name is another form of Krishna, that best friend of ours that is now dancing on our tongue. Therefore, we should relish the holy name when we chant. When you chant your japa, you should think what a great opportunity. Krishna has transformed himself into the holy name, so that I can have him dance on my tongue and into the core of my heart. And in another form, Kripa, merciful form of the Lord, he comes as the devotee. We should never think that the devotee of the Lord is any less important for us than the Lord himself. In fact, we are told, Krishna says, that my devotee is my real being. He is most dear to me, even more than myself. Krishna holds the devotee more dear to him than even he treats himself. More dear to me than Lakshmi. More dear to me than anyone else, he says, is my devotee. So, how carefully we should honor, revere, and love the devotee. But it tests our love. It tests our love. Because it's easy to project our love to the deity. It's more difficult to love the devotee of the Lord. Because the deity remains there. You can be a murderer and come in front of the deity, and the deity still smiles. But if you're a murderer and you come in front of the devotee will say, you have committed murder. This is wrong. Therefore, the devotee is telling you what the Lord wants to say. The devotee is a mercy representative of the Lord, and it is through the devotee's lips that we understand the desire of the Lord. Therefore, it is so important to know how to serve, and therefore this verse, Nasta Paeshu Abhadeshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya. In this way, Prabhupada says, a devotee naturally develops his dormant transcendental knowledge. As he hears more about Krishna from the Bhagavatam and from the devotees, he becomes fixed in the devotional service of the Lord. By development of devotional service, one becomes freed from the modes of passion and ignorance, and thus material lusts and avarice are diminished. So, Nit Bhagavad Sevaya, to serve, to hear and to serve the devotee, as well as the book Bhagavatam. This is our primary function. And the result will be that Kama Lobha Dayas Chaya, that the lust and greed will become driven out of the heart. With these impurities wiped away, the candidate remains steady in his position of pure goodness. Because when you have too much lust, when you are too much envious, when you are too much angry, you cannot be steady in your devotional service, because you will not be in goodness. You will be overcome by passion and ignorance. Passion and ignorance, Krishna says, it is this all-devouring, sinful enemy of the world. Lust. Lust comes in many subtle ways. The desire for prominence, the desire for recognition, for enjoyment. And when we get our desires frustrated, what happens? We become angry. And that anger burns within us. And we shine that anger in so many different objects. And we cause ourselves to become more and more bound up in sinful entanglement. So we have to learn to control lust, envy, greed, anger, all of these different emotions, illusion, sleep. There's so many different enemies which can overcome us, have to be controlled. When these impurities are wiped away, the candidate becomes fixed in pure goodness. He becomes enlightened by devotional service and understands the science of God perfectly. Thus, Bhakti Yoga severs the hard knot of material affection and enables one to come at once to the stage of a samsayam samagram, understanding of the supreme absolute truth, personality of Godhead. Therefore, only by hearing from Krishna or from his devotee in Krishna consciousness can one understand the science of Krishna. Now Krishna says, Jnanam teham savijnanam idam vakshyami asheshataha yagyatvaneha bhuyo yach natavyam avashishyate. I shall now declare unto you in full this knowledge, both phenomenal and numinous. This being known, nothing further shall remain for you to know. Everything is going to be explained by Krishna. Why is Arjuna qualified to hear? Prabhupada explains. The Lord wants to explain the above-mentioned system of knowledge because Arjuna is Krishna's confidential devotee and friend. In the beginning of the 4th chapter, this explanation was given by the Lord, and it is again confirmed here. A complete knowledge can be achieved only by the devotee of the Lord in disciplic succession directly from the Lord. Therefore, one has to accept a spiritual master, take initiation from him, and enter into this disciplic line of succession. Otherwise, it is impossible to get this knowledge. You can study the Bhagavad Gita, but you won't get this knowledge. Because in the 4th chapter, Krishna clearly says, Bhaktosi me sakha jeti, because you are my devotee and my friend. And Prabhupada explains here, this means to enter into disciplic succession. Because the guru will train. People are averse to accepting guru, because they want to try to do things on their own. But that system is not proved here. Krishna says very clearly, Evam parampara praptam imam nijashyo vidu. I spoke this knowledge in the parampara system. I gave it to the sun god. He gave it to his son. And he gave it to his son. In this way, this knowledge was handed down. So, guru to disciple. This is parampara. And it is an age-old system which cannot be violated. We cannot try to change the system or the philosophy of Bhagavad Gita. Therefore, Prabhupada says, Bhagavad Gita as it is. But we are fortunate, again, that Srila Prabhupada has transferred the entire system of Vedic culture throughout the world. And he has made a system through giving us his books, his purports. He has trained disciples, and now his knowledge can spread so nicely all over the world. Prabhupada says, one should be intelligent enough to know the source of all knowledge, who is the cause of all causes, and the only object of meditation in all types of yoga. When the cause of all causes becomes known, then everything knowable becomes known, and nothing remains unknown. When you come to the point of understanding Krishna, then everything will become known. So how do we understand Krishna? We understand Krishna through his devotee. So the whole purpose of having guru is to learn from the guru how to know Krishna, how to please Krishna. How do we please Krishna? We learn from the spiritual master what he learned from his spiritual master. The spiritual master is supposed to enliven the disciples in all of the different aspects of devotional service. He engages them in deity worship. He engages them in sankirtan. He engages them in offering foodstuffs to the Lord. He engages them in hearing the pastimes of the Lord. In this way, the spiritual master gradually puts out the raging fire of material existence. So, we should realize our indebtedness to the Guru Parampara, who have come to us. Otherwise, we were lost. Actually, we were lost. We have to recognize that the spiritual master comes on behalf of Krishna and takes us out of this material world. And how does he do that? By giving us this transcendental knowledge. In text 1, Krishna says that if you get this knowledge, he says, Asam Sayam Samagra Mam. He says, without doubt, you will be able to know me in full. without any doubt whatsoever. So, all doubts have to be removed. And that is why Arjuna asks many questions. A sincere disciple will place his doubts or her doubts before the spiritual master with full submission, wanting these doubts to be removed. If you keep doubts within your heart, if you remain confused, then you will not be able to fully surrender unto Krishna. So, one should be very straightforward and truthful in dealings with the spiritual master, but it should be full of love and devotion. If there's no love, no devotion, then it's impossible to be able to accept the instructions coming from the spiritual master. So, we have to be very careful to perform our devotional service free from all offenses. Offenses against the holy name, offenses against the deity, offenses against the devotee, and offenses against the guru. All of these can destroy our spiritual life, especially the last two. Offenses against the spiritual master and offenses against the devotee are the cause of destruction of all of one's assets. It is explained that when one commits such offenses, that person becomes robbed of their longevity, he becomes robbed of his opulences, he becomes robbed of his intelligence, he becomes robbed of all of his pious assets, and eventually he falls down into a hellish position. It is so grievous to offend the devotees of the Lord. So, if one actually has any intelligence and sense and sees what one's best interest is, then they will know certainly that we have to try to fulfill the desire of our Guru Parampara. We should try to inquire from the representative of our Parampara, how may I please Krishna? How will Krishna be satisfied? And fulfilling the instructions given, this will assure our safe journey back to Godhead. The system is not difficult. Just like every day, we went to Srila Prabhupada, and Prabhupada would say, do like this. We didn't say, if we had some idea, Prabhupada would hear, but ultimately we accepted Prabhupada's conclusion. That is faith. If one doesn't have that faith, then how will he progress? One has to accept an authority. Otherwise, you accept your own mind as an authority. But your mind is imperfect. It goes back and forth with so many different concoctions. So, this is difficult. Therefore, it's difficult to accept Guru. Because one has to give up the false ego. That I am the most intelligent, that I know what is best. If we knew what is best, then how do we find ourselves in this material world? We obviously do not know what is best. Therefore we surrender. As Arjuna says in the second chapter, now I'm confused about my duty, and therefore I am accepting you as my Guru. Please instruct me what is to be done. And Prabhupada says in the purport, the talks which went on between Krishna and Arjuna as equals and friends is put aside, and Arjuna now submits himself as a student. So one should see who is in a superior position and surrender unto that person. That person becomes Guru, and you become disciple. And if you don't become disciple before a superior person, and if you continue to put forward one's own intelligence, then the whole thing will be lost. You'll become deviated and you remain in the material clutches. And what's worse is that when you come close to the fire, you can get burned or you can take advantage and get valuable benefit. So, in coming closer to Guru and Vaishnavas, one gets a great opportunity to advance, but one also runs the risk of falling down to hell. Prabhupada said the spiritual life means to associate with the devotees of the Lord is like a razor's edge. A razor can cut the hair nicely or it can create a club. So if you do not know properly how to associate with devotees of the Lord, then you get into so much difficulty. Then such persons should move away. They're better off serving at a distance. Prabhupada gave that practical advice many times. He told certain persons, it's better that you cannot work cooperatively, then you move aside. And you just appreciate at a distance. But you don't disturb the devotional service which is being performed for the deity's pleasure. So, living in a society like Krishna Consciousness Society or ISKCON requires that there are certain rules and regulations which govern the society. And to govern the society, Prabhupada set up a governing body commission, which establishes the rules and the regulations of how our movement functions. And people who want to work within the society have to accept that governing body. Prabhupada didn't force anyone. He said, if you don't like the direction of our governing body, then you can go out and do your own thing. You can create your own society. But don't try to change what Prabhupada has given and what the governing body decides. He told many people this. There were different times, different people found difficulty in cooperating. Prabhupada said, I have no objection. Even he said to them, you can still be my disciple. But you work on your own and you can form your own society if you wish. But don't in any way confuse what is going on within our society. Our society, like all societies, works by its rules and regulations. And the governing body is not a material body. It is a body of very senior Vaishnavas, and they base their judgments on scripture. And they understand the scripture as Prabhupada is speaking from his teachings. But this is our society, this is our system. And if we work within this system, then ISKCON, Prabhupada said, is his body. Prabhupada made the statement that ISKCON is my body. So he wanted us to understand that if we do not work nicely and cooperatively within the ISKCON, it's like people trying to give massage to the Father and everybody is fighting, and the only person who suffers is the Father. So everyone, Prabhupada said, if you love me, learn to cooperate. And to cooperate means to accept the authorities who are established by Prabhupada. The governing body, the temple president. If you don't like this, then you just go out and work on your own. That is the system that Prabhupada established. If you want to fight with Prabhupada, then you can take your own risk and do so, and you will get the result. Everyone who has tried to do so has simply fallen down. If anyone tries to oppose Prabhupada's system, they'll simply have difficulty. But if on their own they want to work in their own way, Prabhupada said you have every right to do that. Nobody is forced. But within our society, we will govern it as we want to govern it, as Prabhupada told us to govern it. Next verse. Manusyanam sahasreshu kaschid itate siddhaye yatatam api siddhanam kaschid mam veti tathataha. Out of many thousands among men, one may endeavor for perfection, and out of those who have achieved perfection, hardly one knows me in truth. This is the fact that we find very rare for a person to succeed in spiritual life. Prabhupada said, don't be surprised who leaves, but be surprised who stays. Because Krishna himself says that it is very rare that a person will be successful in spiritual life. Therefore, we see many persons come, they even take initiation, but after a while, then they leave. This is the fact. Out of all of Prabhupada's disciples, very few are still remaining servants. Now, each one of them may say, I left for this reason, I left for that reason. But in any case, it is mentioned in Bhagavad Gita, out of many thousands, one may endeavor for perfection, and of those who achieve perfection, hardly one knows me in truth. Why? Because it's very difficult. It is very difficult to give up the false ego. It is very difficult to be so humble that you can admit, I'm a fool. That is very difficult. It is very difficult to control and regulate your life and chant 16 rounds every day. Very few people can do this. Someone can read a verse from Bhagavad Gita, okay. Someone can come and have some kirtan, okay. But to do all of the things which are required to be a strong devotee is very difficult. It's not easy. Prabhupada once said that if I lower the standard, I can have so many disciples. But what would be the value of such disciples? Therefore, I have kept this stricture, 16 rounds and the 4 regulative principles. And he said if anyone will just do this, they will immediately make so much advancement in spiritual life. So we are following that system that Prabhupada gave. First of all, chant 16 rounds. When you can chant 16 rounds, you can follow the 4 principles, and that chanting means 16 good rounds, concentrated rounds. When you can do all of these, then we can expect that Krishna is guiding your intelligence. Otherwise, your intelligence is guided by the material energy, and you're sure to make mistakes. There are 4 defects that every mortal person has. They make mistakes, they become illusions, their senses are imperfect, and there's a propensity to get cheated or to cheat others. Unless you're very devoted, very faithful, very humble, under the shelter of Guru, then you are in the position of an ordinary soul with these 4 defects. So therefore we wear these neck beads. These neck beads mean that I have a master. Prabhupada said they are like our dog tag. If you don't have a master, you're like a street dog. And at any moment you can be impounded. The impounding representative or agent is Yamaraj. And at any moment you can be impounded. So it is not enough simply to wear Tulsi Mala. One has to also be surrendered to Guru Parampara. Otherwise, you are surrendered to the material energy. You may be intelligent, you may have some good ideas, but sometimes your intelligence can become bewildered. If our intelligence cannot be bewildered, then how have you come in the material world? Do you think that you can get out of the material world simply by your own intelligence? I don't think so. Therefore, I fully depend upon the mercy of my Guru. I think that he can bring me out of this material world. I think it is by his mercy that I will come out of this world, not by my own effort. My only effort is somehow to follow his instructions and please him. And by his mercy, he'll take me out of the material world. Otherwise, I have no hope. This is actually how a devotee thinks, no matter who that devotee is, even up to the point of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. He also took this position. Before his spiritual master, he said, I consider myself a fool. And I simply depend upon the words of my Guru. I simply depend upon the mercy of my Guru. Now, if Chaitanya Mahaprabhu can take this position, and what to speak of us who are ordinary persons? Dependence on Guru doesn't simply mean individual Guru. Sri Guru Vaishnavamscha. The Guru connects us to the whole line of Parampara. Therefore, we want this position, to be the surrendered servant of our Guru. But we don't try to jump over. That person will never be accepted. Sometimes Prabhupada would see that some disciple of his was trying to go beyond him to Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. And Prabhupada always corrected him. Don't think that my Guru Maharaj will accept you in that position. He will not do so. He'll see how you're serving your Guru. And when you're faithful to his servant, then he will immediately accept you. But if you reject his servant and think, now I will serve you directly, he will never accept you. You're simply living in an illusion. You have no position. Your spiritual whereabouts become unknown. Prabhupada says here, non-devotees, that means persons who cannot follow the practices of Krishna consciousness, declare that the path of bhakti or devotional service is very easy, but they cannot practice If the path is so easy as the non-devotee class have been proclaimed, why don't they take up the difficult path? Actually, the path of bhakti is not easy. It's not easy. Therefore, people cannot even chant 16 rounds. They cannot follow the 4 principles. When we tell people to follow 4 principles, they say, it's impossible. Or if we tell them to chant 16 rounds, they try, but after a while they cannot. Why? Either they have past sinful activities, or they're committing offenses. There's only 2 reasons why someone cannot chant 16 rounds. Either their past is very sinful, or they're committing offenses, and the holy name will not come on their tongue in a regular way. There's no third reason besides that. That sinful past takes the form of philosophical, ideas, or this or that, and it takes so many different forms, over-intelligence. Therefore, we'll learn in the 7th chapter who are the 4 types of persons who are Tuskritina. Maya Pritiganis, they're very intelligent. They have so much intelligence, but their intelligence is stolen by illusion because of their sinful activities. When? In the past. You cannot see the sin because it was performed in the past, but it's there nevertheless reacting. And it reacts in the form of over-intelligence, which stops someone from surrendering to Guru and Krishna. And when they hear these words, they simply become angry. When they hear the truth, they become more angry. That's all that happens. Like a serpent, when you feed it milk and bananas, it just becomes more and more full of venom. Prabhupada says the so-called path of bhakti practiced by unauthorized persons without knowledge of bhakti may be easy, but when it is practiced factually according to the rules and regulations, the speculative scholars and philosophers fall away from the path. Therefore, Krishna is rarely known. No one knows me as I am, the Lord says, and if one does know him, then Samahatma Sadurlabha. Such a great soul is very rare. Therefore, unless one practices devotional service to the Lord, one cannot know Krishna as he is, even though one is a great scholar or philosopher. Only the pure devotees can know something of the inconceivable, transcendental qualities in Krishna, in the cause of all causes, in his omnipotence and opulence, in his wealth, fame, strength, beauty, knowledge, and renunciation, because Krishna is benevolently inclined to his devotees. And what does it mean to be a devotional servant? To be a devotee? It means to practice devotional service according to Narada Pancharatra. That means chanting a set number of rounds, worshipping Guru, worshipping Tulsi, worshipping Bhagavatam, worshipping the devotees, the Vaishnavas. There's so many 64 items which Srila Sanatana Goswami has gathered together from Hari Bhakti Vilas. So this is devotional service. You do some part and not another part, then you remain diseased. That is the result. Just like if you eat a dinner and you only eat rice, then after a while you get diseased. Even though rice is nourishing, but in and of itself, you may not be able to survive. So there are many different items, 64 items in all, which we have to learn to perform. So you have to read Nectar Devotion and perform these 64 items very carefully. This is called sadhana bhakti. And naturally that sadhana bhakti will lead to bhava bhakti, or ecstatic love for Krishna. Otherwise, simply to come to the goal of ecstatic love for Krishna without going through the sadhana bhakti process is impossible. No one can understand Krishna as he is by his blunt material senses. Now, how do we get the senses purified? By chanting and performing sadhana bhakti. Otherwise, your senses, including your mind, are material. They will not be spiritualized. You will not have spiritualized intelligence. Your intelligence will mislead you into the wrong conclusions. And you will, just as 16th chapter Bhagavad Gita says, they do not know what is to be done and what is not to be done. You read 16th chapter, Divine and Demonic Natures. A person is a demon who cannot know what is to be done and what is not to be done. How do you know what is to be done and what is not to be done? What is the way to know? What is the way? What would you use? Krishna.
Through Guru.
Yeah. Through Guru, through Scripture. If you say, I'll know it on my own, only if you're a pure devotee can you say that. Only a pure devotee has Krishna directly talking within his heart to him. Otherwise, we have to consult Guru Krishna. There's no other way to know what is to be done and what is not to be done. On your own, it's called speculation. But a pure devotee who is fully surrendered, Krishna is directly talking to that person. Otherwise, you're on a mental platform and you're sure to make mistakes. Then Krishna says, they do horrible works which are meant to destroy the world. Clearly in the 16th chapter it said that a person who's on the platform, and you can see what is material life. What is this material civilization? Destructive. It is not helpful. It does not build, it destroys. Simply destroying. Prabhupada said they make a car and next year they make it so that it's no longer functional within 1 year. Everything is built in for destruction. By the time they're 15, we heard one person said, one girl, Dhananjay was telling me, one friend of his, 15-year-old daughter, 2 abortions already. And finally she took a knife and plunged the knife into her stomach. Right through, and she's in a hospital in a psychiatric ward. And now, Dhananjay's friend says, I need to talk to you again. I have to hear more what you were saying. This is the material, this is the result of material civilization. When people are without guidance, then their minds just become their worst enemy. And they do so many horrible activities. And they're so bewildered that they think that the wrong thing is the right thing. And they're convinced of it. No matter how much you try to appeal to them, they're convinced. Why? Because of the sinful past? Or because of offenses? Because of anger, one's intelligence becomes bewildered. And Prabhupada, you see, 2nd chapter, text 62, 63, the intelligence becomes bewildered and they fall down. They cannot, their memory becomes poor. They forget, I'm a conditioned soul, I can make mistakes. No, I know what is to be done. They're convinced. And so the whole civilization is like this. You try to tell people to become Krishna conscious. What is the process of Krishna consciousness? They cannot hear. Cannot hear anything. They're so convinced of their own ideas. So unless one is humble, unless one can come to the point of realizing I'm a fool, cannot be a devotee. First point of being a devotee is to admit I'm a fool. And if you don't have that feeling, sitting before Guru and Vaishnavas, you should understand what is your real nature. Don't have humility. Humility is the actual quality of Vaishnava. But Arjuna, who was throwing arrows and who was so powerful, he was actually the most humble. Don't think that humility means that you simply sit and cower. No, it doesn't mean that. When Prabhupada used to argue very strongly in front of 10,000, 20,000 people, he would shout at people and shout them down when they were saying nonsense things, and people would say, you're angry, you're not humble. And Prabhupada said, I'm presenting Krishna's words. That is my humility. I am not presenting my own points. I'm representing the Guru Parampara. That is my humility. I'm not presenting my own position. You are presenting your own position. You are arguing from your own position. That is your pride. But I am defending our Guru Parampara. That is my humility. So we should understand what is actual humility. It's very, very easy to find fault, but it's very, very difficult to be exemplary. It's very easy to find fault. Even the moon, which can light up the whole sky at night, has dark spots on it. It's very easy to point that out. It's so easy to find fault, but it's much more difficult to be an exemplary person oneself and to teach by example. When Prabhupada heard people who were very critical, he always said, "And do better yourself." Instead of simply criticizing, do better. And teach them by your example, not just by criticizing. So we face this difficulty. The difficulty, we're dealing with the material civilization. And that material civilization is organized in such a way to present strong opposition to Krishna consciousness. But that opposition is not so problematic as the opposition that comes from within when we leave aside the Guru Parampara and the guidance coming from Guru Parampara. Prabhupada said that you cannot be stopped from outside, you can only be stopped from within. And not by enemies within, but by our own inability to stick to the principles of the Guru Parampara. And all of his association, so much time he spent simply to convince his disciples to stick to his orders strictly. So first, simple instruction. Chant 16 rounds and follow the 4 principles. If you can't do that, then what are you talking about? Come to the most basic, simple point. Don't even go to B if you can't get to A. Then you take up point by point by point by point. Be an example. Then you'll be able to know Krishna truth. Just knowing Krishna truth doesn't simply mean keeping your head in the Bhagavad Gita. You have to live in a society of devotees. And you have to function within a society of devotees. And this will help you to understand and live the teachings of Bhagavad Gita, not otherwise. Anybody have any questions?
I heard it said that the Guru has mercy and cheating, 2 different things. So, and mercy is causeless, but is the cause of being cheated and having some
As the spiritual master cheats us out of our material attachments. Just like when I surrendered to Prabhupada, I did not know how much I would have to give my love. In that sense, Prabhupada, he cheated me. He said, "Here, I will sell you this Srimad Bhagavatam, 3 volumes." I said, "How much did it cost?" He said, "Only $20. I thought this is a bargain, but I didn't know that what he meant is $20 is the first down payment. $20 and your life. If he had told me that, I don't know if I would have. So just chant Hare Krishna. Very simple. I started chanting. I didn't know about all 64 rules and regulations of Sadhana Bhakti. If he could have told me all the difficulties that one would have to face, do you think any disciple in the beginning, they might, very few persons would say, "Never mind, I'll do it." And only because it's a little difficult, people give up the path. But actually, the more difficult it becomes, the more enthusiastic we become now. Because we are all the followers of Queen Kunti. And we are praying to Krishna that we don't mind the difficulties, because it gives us more and more opportunity to serve Him. Especially, we were born in Western countries. We have some Kshatriya nature. And Prabhupada knew this. So it doesn't matter. And everybody now, never mind Western, Eastern, everybody has got this Kshatriya spirit a little bit. So it doesn't disturb that there are great difficulties to face. We feel so much pleasure with this opportunity to face these difficulties, because then more and more we can remember Krishna, just like Queen Kunti said. If everything was peaceful, we might just eat and fall asleep. But when there's difficulty, we're always awake. Where is the next problem going to come? Where is the next problem going to come? And after all, when it's all over and we're back in the spiritual world and we're sitting in front of Srila Prabhupada and he'll be laughing and we'll all laugh and we'll be so happy. And we'll think that just like Prabhupada, he fought so hard with this Hare Krishna land in Bombay to get that land. It was so difficult. It was made difficult by those outside and by those inside. Everything made it difficult. But when it was all done, I was one of the people who made it difficult. I was inside. I could not understand Prabhupada's desire at the time. And I made a great mistake. Myself and the Prabhupada's secretary. But the secretary, he did not work to correct the mistake. And he left. And I stayed on the Prabhupada's guidance and I worked under Prabhupada's direction to correct the mistake. And it got corrected. And when it was all done, when everything was done and we had the land, all was finished, Prabhupada leaned back and looked at me, the room had been clean, he said, it was a great fight. And it was like he relished all the time. For 3-4 years, he was struggling, so much anxiety, so much tension, but at the end, he said that he was relishing that opportunity to serve his Guru Maharaj and serve Krishna. He promised Krishna, just like we promised Krishna, that this Hare Krishna Dham will be built, and it will be built. It will be built, despite all the demons that are working to stop it. It will be built. Prabhupada told that deity, Radharasa Bihari, you just sit here, and I will arrange everything for you. So in the same way, we have promised Radharasa Madhava. So we must fulfill that promise. That is our life's mission. Anybody that's part of this project must fulfill that promise. And you'll go back to God and fulfill that promise. And nothing will stop that promise if you're sincere and remain dedicated to it. That so many persons may try to stop it, but it won't be stopped. Because Prabhupada said, Krishna is in this movement. If Radharasa Madhava is Krishna himself, you have that conviction, I have that conviction, then how can anybody stop his project? The only thing that can stop it is your own lack of faith. Your own lack of faith, that's what will stop it. But if you have faith, nothing will stop it. And we take great pleasure in the difficulty of making it. It will be very satisfying. Because when it comes up, it will be much more satisfying. And Prabhupada will bless us 100 times more. So whether it's easy or whether it's difficult, either way, it will be all right. But we will not stop serving our Guru. We will not stop serving our Guru. We will not stop serving ISKCON. We will not stop serving Deity. We will not stop serving the devotees. You may stop all those things, but we will not stop serving those. It is not conditioned by any circumstance. We are feeling now in the Orient, where the government is opposed, and that they have to hide the deities. They get an ashram, they have so much difficulty, they rent an ashram in an impossible circumstance, and then the government comes crashing down, and suddenly they have to take the deities and hide the deities in a closet in their home. And all their hard work, all their hard effort, they finally got their prayers fulfilled, finally got an ashram, and everything's finished. And still they don't lose hope, and they don't lose faith. And they just wait for when they can again get another ashram and again put the deity there. This is devotional service. And this is what makes the devotee go back to Godhead. Not easy times. This is the Kali Yuga. You can go back to Godhead in one lifetime, but you're going to have to suffer for it. In Sakya Yuga, they get 100,000 years. Here you only get 100 years, but it won't be easy. If you're looking for an easy ride, this is the wrong place. It's not going to be easy, and it doesn't get any easier. I have not seen it get easier for anyone. I have not seen anyone. I didn't see it for Prabhupada. Prabhupada was sitting with us one day, About 6, 7 years after, maybe it was 1976, and he was remembering the old days, and he said it was so easy then. He said, now it's so complicated. So I saw how complicated it became for Prabhupada. So if it can become difficult for Srila Prabhupada, certainly it will become the same for us. Because the devotional service becomes more and more real. It's just like a small child. A small child just plays. When I first joined the Hare Krishna movement, all I did was chant Hare Krishna and take prasad. Nothing else. Nothing else. I just chanted my rounds, walked around outside, sat up in a tree, chanted some more, walked around the block, chanted a little more, and then Prabhupada said, get a job. And I said, well, you get a job. Why do we have to get a job? I don't want to be part of this material society. Prabhupada said, you have to support the temple. That's not material. I said, I don't want to be part of this material society. Prabhupada said, you have to support the temple. Get a job. I got a hellish job, but I did it thinking now I'm supporting the temple. It doesn't matter. This is Krishna consciousness. So that means sacrifice, that means surrender, that means you have to be prepared to change your thoughts, to change the personality that you have. If you're too much attached to the kind of person you are, you can't succeed in Krishna consciousness. Therefore, it cuts across all boundaries. If you can't succeed in being the same, if you're too much attached to your gross or subtle body, you can't become a good devotee. People are attached, not only to the gross body, they're attached to the subtle body. The kind of personality they have, the kind of ego they have, the kind of mentality and intelligence they have. All of these things have to be changed. Thoroughly changed. And people don't want that. They're attached. And so they struggle and fight. And we have to take that thankless task. Because Prabhupada said, learn to cooperate. No, we're trying. But the basis of cooperation is to follow the authorities. The basis, this is not demon crazy. Prabhupada said that this movement is not based on democracy, which is demon crazy. Demon crazy, democracy. When demons become crazy, they say everybody just vote. Didn't set it up that way. I didn't get elected to the GBC by a vote. He appointed me. And he appointed all the temple presidents. He didn't just say, everybody get together and raise your hands. He appointed it that was based on authority. And that's the same system that Krishna follows in chapter 4 of Bhagavad Gita. Who voted for Vivaswami, the sun god? Was it a vote? Who voted for Manu? Was it by vote? Vote, vox populi? Where does it say that? That system was not followed in India. That system was not followed anywhere in the world. Now that is the modern day Kali Yuga system. So many unqualified people get together and everybody votes. And then politics comes. It's not the system. It's not the system. Even today, it's not. There is some vote. Just like to become a GBC member, someone is recommended. But it's by recommendation, and it's by an authoritative process. And then we take votes amongst those people. Qualified people, not just anybody. What is the use? Prabhupada said so many people voted but they're not qualified. And what is the qualification for Krishna consciousness? Follow 16 rounds, 4 regulative principles, and follow the sadhana bhakti process. That's your qualification. That's your right to membership. Otherwise, there are different types of members. We have our members, our life members, or different types of members. But actual devotee member is the person who is a sadhaka. All right. Stop. It is. Wait. She's Sri Radha Madhava ki, Sri Radha Kirupani ki, Sri Sri Gonitai ki, Sri Giriraj Govardhan ki, Srila Prabhupada ki, or Bhaktivedanta ki, or Prema ki.